everyone, so welcome back to my Carpenter's Daughter channel. Today I'm going to show you how I made these DIY roller blinds from a recycled old roller blind, and in total it cost me £17.65. I was actually quoted £67 online, so I made almost a £50 saving, and I absolutely love it. So keep on watching if you want to learn how to make it. So here's me unravelling the second-hand one that I bought from a jumble sale, and it cost me £1.50, and it didn't come with any fittings, but I know B&Q sold them at £3.15, and that comes with everything that you'll need. So I'm just unravelling the old roller blind because I don't want the fabric, and it's actually only attached by glue anyway, and 2 silver clips which I'm going to keep to one side because I thought those would be useful for later. And I just slowly and gently peeled that off. But there was also another sort of flat pole inside towards the bottom of the hem, which I thought I'd reuse as well, just to give my fabric some weight. So the first thing I did was measure the width of the window, but take into consideration how much pole I would need while the fixtures were up there. That way I wouldn't have to cut the pole twice. So I just marked that with a pen where I wanted to cut it and cut with a mini hacksaw. My tip for this is just do it very slowly, don't force it and don't bend it to break it off at the end because you don't want to warp it. You need to make sure that the fixture is going to fit in there perfectly. So I popped the fixtures in the ends from that B&Q pack and just held it up just to double check it was definitely right, and it was. But bear in mind you don't want the pole to be too tight because you don't want your roller blind to be too stiff when you're pulling it down and closing it. And once I knew it was going to fit, I measured the distance from the UPVC window and where the handle stuck out, because I needed to position the blind where the handle didn't obstruct opening and closing it. And once I've worked that out, it was about 2.5 inches. I just held each bracket at the end and just marked with a pencil where I needed to drill some pilot holes. Oh no, it dropped in my coffee. So I made sure a drill bit was big enough for the raw plug, but I didn't want to drill too far. So my little tip is to put some tape around there as a marker so you know where to stop when you're drilling in. And I just drilled through those holes. Although, stupidly, I think I'm man enough not to wear a mask, which is silly, so I highly recommend wearing a mask and goggles. I'm just very lazy. And once you've done that, fit in your raw plugs, and then you can screw the fittings into place. I made sure my pulley was actually on the right hand side because I just felt it was more natural in my kitchen. So once I'd done that, it was time for the exciting part, and that was to get all the fabric prepared. Now you'll probably find the most part of this job is preparation, so take your time, and I actually enjoyed this. And all I did was lay out my fabric. I'm using Ripstop fabric here, which is actually what you find in air balloons, and it's really strong, it's really light, and because it's anti-fray, you don't need to do any hems. As long as you make sure you're cutting with sharp scissors or a rotary cutter, you're fine, and you can get a professional look. I was really worried about doing hems and it bulking up, not being even on the roll, and I don't have that with this finish. So I would use this fabric again and again. And it was only £9 a metre. In fact, this was the most expensive part of this. So make sure you lay it on a flat surface and that there's no creases or anything like that. You might want to iron your fabric first. And here's me planning where I wanted the pattern to be, because I didn't want a funny looking pattern that started one place and finished in another by the time it was up. So I held the bar, making sure it was even between chevrons, and only made the fabric a mil or 2 shorter than the pole, just so it could freely roll up. So once I'd marked my starting point, I used my Omni Grid board. I absolutely love this thing because it just guides you everywhere with every inch. I'll leave any links to the products that I'm using below because this I swear by. It's expensive, but I've used it on so many projects like patchwork quilting and stuff, and it saves so much time and it gives you much more confidence on your measurements. So I drew a long line, making sure it was completely straight in the pattern. I've actually got 1.5 meters length here because I wanted to make sure I had loads of seam allowance and plenty to be rolled on the roll while it was up at the top. And once I'd got a straight pencil marking, I used my cutting mat, which has totally seen better days. I actually bought this cheap from Ryman's quite a few years ago, and a rotary cutter. Now my advice with a rotary cutter is just do it slowly, take your time. You don't want to go too mad in case you just accidentally cut in the wrong way, because this is going to be your finished hem and you can't tell. And once I'd got that side done to how I wanted it, I started making another line for the other edge to cut, and just repeated that method. And then it was time to do something what I call squaring fabric up, and I used my Omni Grip board again and made sure the top and the bottom of the fabric were completely straight. So there's my whole full strip, a perfect rectangle, and now it was time to glue it to my pole. Now I suppose there's many glues that you can use for this project. I haven't had a great deal of experience with glue because I do deep down prefer sewing. But one thing I highly recommend is something called copy decks, and a lot of people use this on leather sofas. I've used it on leatherette cushions and it works perfectly, and it's a really strange latex rubbery glue, and it's safe to use as well. And where the old fabric was originally glued to the pole, it left an adhesive strip behind, so I just followed that line and just applied a thin coat of glue with a brush provided. And then I carefully and slowly attached the fabric. You will need some patience, just make sure it's completely straight. And then pressed and rubbed it down with my hands. Any excess actually turns into rubber anyway, so don't worry. But I did use a sheet on the floor just in case I did any spills. And then those silver clips that I took off earlier came in extremely handy. I just placed one at a time in the middle and just slided it towards the end. I found it just bulked up the fabric if you just went straight for the end anyway. And that to me was a clamp enough, so I didn't really leave it to set. So you might need to do that with a different type of glue you're using, but the fabric was so light anyway. And then just rolled it up on the pole just because I wanted a visual to see what it looked like on my window. Oh wow, yay! And then finally, to finish it off, it was time to add some weight to the fabric just so it hung better. And I pulled out that plastic flat pole from the old blind and held it along the width of the fabric so I knew where to cut it down, which I used a mini hacksaw again, by the way. And once I'd cut it down, I folded the fabric around it, removed the pole, and instead of pressing it down, I just created a crease with my hand and measuring it as I went along and pinned it into place. Now if you didn't want to bother with the sewing machine, that's alright, you could probably use glue for this as well, but I really wanted just to see a row of perfect straight stitches. So I made sure my stitch was slightly longer than normal for a clean, crisp look, and then I sewed one row of stitches all the way along and then popped the pole back in and then placed it back up in the window. And that was it. I couldn't believe how easy this was. I did this on a Saturday evening and it took me longer because I filmed it for you. So I'm now absolutely loving the fact that my very white kitchen has a pop of colour, and now my job is to do the other window. And if you would do this differently, feel free to comment below, because this was my first project on a DIY roller blind. And if you liked it, give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you in my next one. Thanks for watching, bye!